But as I walked on campus today, one of the things, and as I prepared for my visit to Vanderbilt, there was a resounding theme for me that continued to roll through my mind, and that was this theme of legacy. When we look at the history of our university, and starting with the legacy of Commodore Cornelius Vanderbilt, which began in 1873 when this steamboat and railroad magnate gave the strange gift of nearly $1 million to the Methodist Bishop Holland McTeer to create the educational legacy here at the university that we all know and love. So that started a legacy, both for the Vanderbilt heirs as well as for you and I. Now, it's been said that Commodore Vanderbilt considered himself an unlikely philanthropist. And if you look at his history, we could probably all agree on that one point. But he believed his many business and financial endeavors as a tycoon at the dawn of the Second Industrial Revolution would be the things that would forever win him a place in the history books. I sincerely doubt that at the time Commodore Vanderbilt could have imagined that his legacy that he was about to birth here at Vanderbilt University, and I'm sure he would have never guessed that many moons later, a young college-educated woman of color from Memphis, Tennessee, would one day find herself the recipient of this great educational legacy. And like Commodore Vanderbilt, we have a couple of things in common, or just a few. Because I've also, like Commodore Vanderbilt, found myself an accidental social entrepreneur, and at the forefront of what I believe is this third industrial revolution, and at the cusp of driving some disruptive change as we enter a new era of fundamental growth and transition in our society, in this new age of innovation. But this is just where and who I am. As Dean Burgess mentioned, my name is Kimberly Bryant, and I'm the founder and executive director of Black Girls Code. Black Girls Code is a nonprofit organization founded in the Bay Area in April 2011. And we have a really simple mission: to get girls of color ages 7 to 17 both excited and introduced to the world of technology so they can become the creators and the innovators of tomorrow. Black Girls Code is a movement much like those movements of my youth, and the winds of social, cultural, and economic change are indeed blowing. If we look at the society around us today, the innovation economy is firmly in our path. The U.S. Department of Labor estimates that by the year 2020, there will be more than 1.4 million computing-related job openings. Computing jobs are currently the fastest growing and will remain the highest paid positions in our economy. But yet, and I'm sure this is no surprise to you all, we can only fill about 30% of those jobs with U.S. computing grads at current rates. But the problem that we're trying to solve and striving to solve as Black Girls Code is that with a few exceptions, Black women and women of color have been largely absent from this current technological economy which has swept our world. And this was something that was a surprise to me, because as Burgess mentioned, at the end of 2010, I was leaving more than 20 years of a very long career in computer science and engineering, and wanting to jump into this pool of innovation that sat at my back door and from my office and from my home in the San Francisco Bay Area. So what I found was pretty surprising. When I went to meetup and conference after conference, I found a perplexing thing that really didn't sit right with me. Not only was I one of the only women in the room, I was probably the only person of color. So I didn't really understand how that could be when the industry of computer science and IT is growing by leaps and bounds. I was also really driven by a personal passion. I talk a lot when I speak and a lot when I go and talk to youth about my personal legacy in my home being my daughter. My daughter Kai is 15 now, but when we started Black Girls Code, she was only 12. And she's what I call a natural-born geek. So she could probably and would love to play any of the guys in this room on World of Warcraft, all those different games that you guys buy at the GameStop that I saw right across the street. It's a familiar place for me. But she was always one of the only girls in her group of friends, or the only girls in her peer group that had this type of interest. And when I looked for an organization to really nurture that talent and interest in technology, and that would move her from being a consumer of this tech to a creator, I found the same perplexing problems. Not only was she the only girl in the room, she was often the only student of color. So the burning question is, why in this age of the ubiquitous digital access on a global scale are women and women of color by and large absent from either being participants or leaders in this innovation economy? When you look at some of the statistics, in every facet of STEM, the traditional path has increased in terms of numbers, except for computer science. It dips precipitously from the time that I graduated in '89 to today. As consumers, we as African Americans and women dominate the landscape in technology. African Americans are more than 29% as likely as the average American adult to own a smartphone. They're more than 13% more likely to own a tablet or PC, such as an iPad. They are also more likely than average to go online to listen to movies, listen to the radio, download music, or watch movies. If you look at social media, African Americans and Hispanics hyper-index across every single platform, from Twitter to Pinterest to Facebook, as opposed to their peers. And yet, for many reasons, the perception of the geek as being white, as being male, has become the dominant narrative defining the public persona of what it means to be a techie. And girls, especially girls of color, are summarily bypassed as both being creative and capable change agents in the technology industry. There's been some recent studies in the classroom, and one particular comes to mind, which is called ambient belonging. And it shows that it is not women's deficiency in math and science that keep them from pursuing a degree in computer science, but the image of the field. This is something that Dean Frichet and I spoke about this morning. Black Girls Code as an organization was founded to redefine this dominant narrative, to shift the paradigm, and to broaden the image of the technology industry. Our work is really focused keenly on redefining the entire discussion around race, gender, and access to technology, and the intersections between those different facets. Our mission is to empower young women of color, as I mentioned before, ages 7 to 17, to embrace this tech marketplace as builders and creators by teaching them these skills in computer programming and technology. Our goal is to reach 1 million girls and to teach them to code by the year 2040. We like to say that we want to become the Girl Scouts of technology. In a little less than 2 years, we've bounded upon this Learn to Code movement, where everyone and their brother are looking at technology and coding as a third language. We are still and have always been the only program of our type and of its type with a singular focus on empowering girls of color to become the tech leaders of tomorrow. We do this by offering courses on a broad spectrum in technology that includes courses in robotics, web design, mobile app development, traditional computer programs such as classes as Ruby, Python, and even game design. In just 2 years, we have seen our organization grow from only 1 chapter in the Bay Area to over 7 chapters in the US and 1 international chapter in Johannesburg. We've reached over 2,000 girls, and our organization continues to grow exponentially. We're on a mission to change the face of technology and to create not just the engineers of tomorrow, but I'm sure Dean Frichet can appreciate this, Our goal is to create the tech leaders and entrepreneurs of tomorrow. In my travels, I'm often asked, and maybe you are wondering, but why would we focus on just one demographic of students? Shouldn't everyone learn how to code? Well, I do believe that it's definitely important that all the students of the day, and even those parents and individuals, learn some STEM technology skills and learn to code. But the true fact of the matter is that in our country, inequality no longer looks the same as it did 50 years ago. If we re-examine this whole issue of legacy, and I look back at our path to the day, when my grandmother was born in the midst of the Second Industrial Revolution, she, like many of my ancestors, perhaps had some lasting dreams that their hard work and ascendance occupationally, that by those jobs and working hard, they would create legacies for their children to erase the dark past of slavery and Jim Crow. And as the tides continue to change, yet inequalities continue to persist. When we founded Black Girls Code in 2011, we took a look at the social landscape right in our own backyard, and the things that we found were fairly troubling. The unemployment rate for African Americans in America is still double that for whites. When we looked at the students in our backyard, we found that African Americans and Latino communities, students perform an average of 2 levels below their peers in math and language arts in grades 4 through 8, and have an average high school dropout rate of more than 37%. This is for both boys and girls. But the issues of inequality even affect girls overall. For most girls like my daughter, the issues start much earlier than college. When we do some of the research and look at the research done from organizations such as Girl Scouts, they found that if you interview girls in middle school, over half of them express an interest in computer science as a career path. Yet, by the time they get to high school, less than 2% of them express the same interest. But the problem for women persists continually along the career pipeline. Today, if you were to go to Silicon Valley, where I spend most of my time, you'll find that women make only 77 cents on the dollar to their male counterparts. And they hold less than 14% of executive officer positions at Fortune 100 companies. Now, as I mentioned, my goal was to begin a startup and become a startup entrepreneur. And if we look at those numbers, the numbers are still troubling because less than 1% of female venture-backed companies are founded by women. We believe as an organization that the time to drive fundamental change for women and girls by leveraging technology as a great equalizer is now. The time is today. And Black Girls Code as an organization is dedicated to driving this change and bringing women and girls to the forefront of the digital revolution as equal partners and as creators, and by emphasizing that an economy cannot survive, an economy cannot thrive if we summarily bypass the skills and collective abilities of over half its participants. So now, although the current status is sometimes dire, I always have to talk a little bit about our success. Some of the girls that have come through our program, such as this one that comes to mind, is Ida from the Bay Area. Ida began our program in Black Girls Code in early 2012. And like many of the young women that I met today at lunch, when I talked to Ida about her career plans, she said, "Ms. Bryant, I don't really know what computer science is. And I don't even really want to be here, but my parents say I have to be here. I really want to be a doctor." And I was like, okay, it's great. Being a doctor is a good, noble career to have, but would you just give it a try? So after that first class, Ida became one of the students that was selected among her peers to present as the top performer in that particular Saturday workshop. And then she came back for the summer. And not only did she take the class and excel at it, I actually let her teach part of the class to the rest of her peers. So I was kind of surprised in 2013, early part of the year, when I got a call and an urgent text from her father saying, Kimberly, can you please, spare some time to mentor Ida? And I was like, well, what's going on? And she said, well, she was in school and after class showing one of her friends how to create a website, and the teacher just happened to pass by and ask what they were doing. So she showed her, and not only does she want Ida to continue doing this, she's going to be teaching both web design and app development to her peers in the fall. That's one story of success, but we have more. This one group of girls here is in my young developers group, and one of them, this one on the end, is actually my daughter. But this group of girls have been in our classes for 2 years now and have continued to not only learn the classes that we teach, but to go beyond it. In this particular class, in this particular photo, they had presented an app that they created in a hackathon where they worked for 2 days to create a social-facing application that would merge food bank companies with consumers and then the sources of food in the community to really address solving hunger and access to food in the Oakland area. These young developers actually presented this topic at the Lean Startup Convention in San Francisco in December. These are but a few of the girls that are coming through our program and are not only being successful and being able to do things that they thought they wouldn't be able to do before, but they're changing their families and the perception of technology in the industry as a whole in the process. We believe women and girls are agents of change. And I know this for a fact based on the conversations that we had at lunch with some of the young leaders from NSBE, some of the young leaders that are women from the Engineering Council right here at Vanderbilt. By empowering women such as these with the technical, career, and entrepreneurial skills to compete in the global economy, we're changing the trajectory of communities and ensuring the economic stability of our nation. I really believe that by focusing on removing barriers that impede women and girls of color, we create a cascading effect on issues of tech inclusion for all and a plethora of seemingly, but not really, unrelated social issues. And that by removing these issues for women of color and girls, we improve individual lives, we enhance communities, and we affect the greater good for all. When I revisit the subject once again of legacy and look at my own path on this earth, I hope that my personal legacy will extend beyond the walls of my personal household. I hope that my personal legacy will be securing the future for girls of color like my daughter. And will involve bringing women and girls of color from behind the click to the forefront as both tech leaders and creators of tomorrow. So my question for you today as young people is, what will be your personal legacy, and what will that entail once you leave Vanderbilt? How will you use the divine gifts of inheritance to create a better world for future generations? Whatever your personal legacy may be, think of your roles as engineers as not just the makers of things, but as the creators of social change, and harness your collective power and brilliance to create a better world with the legacy of access, inclusion, social and economic justice for those who will follow in your footsteps. Thank you. Oh, questions, okay. Okay, Burgess tells me I have to take some questions now. So, any questions you have, I'm more than willing to take them. Yes.
So obviously, in order to get these other chapters going, you've gotten other people excited. Where are you finding your people to, I don't know, who's leading, who's contributing?
So as I mentioned in the presentation, we really do run Black Girls Code as a chapter organization very similar to a Girl Scouts. So all of our local chapters are volunteer run and operated. We create all of our curriculum and program formats centrally as an organization, and then we disseminate it down to the chapters. So we currently have probably about 1,200, almost 1,500 volunteers across the U.S. and in South Africa, and they're really the driving force that kind of keeps our programs running. So we have more volunteers now than we even have programs, because there's that much interest in seeing Black Girls Code expand and seeing it get to other areas. I was speaking to one of the attendees today about just that we have more demand now that we can meet, and we've actually slowed down because we are not big enough to even keep up with it.
Are you getting corporate sponsors?
We do.
They would be so excited.
We do. So a lot of our funding now comes from corporate sponsors as well as from foundation support. But it's probably more 70% corporate sponsors and about 30% foundation support. Yeah. Yes.
How do you structure each individual class?
Yeah, great question. Actually, one of the things that we really focus on in our classes is that they are all project-based. So we don't do a lot of lecture in our class, but we do a little bit, just enough to guide the girls in terms of creating a project at the end, and much like you all have to do, they have to present at the end of the class. So we do team-based learning as well as pairs programming and a lot of project-built work. Every course is built on either creating a web page in a day, creating a mobile app, building a robotics application. All of it's always focused on project-based driven work. Yes?
I've been looking into moving to the Bay Area, and I found that it's sort of infamous for having a particularly large disparity between sort of the wealthy and everyone else. How does that influence your organization, if at all?
It does influence our organization from the standpoint that we have a very small focused demographic that we're looking to tap into to really give them access to the skills that we're trying to build. So when we started in a community called Bayview Hunters Point, which is one of the only minority communities of color left in the Bay Area, in San Francisco. So when I say Bay Area, I'm meaning San Francisco. Now we also operate on the other side of the bridge, which is East Bay, which communities of color are larger in those areas. So our reach has expanded into the Bay Area just to kind of address that demographic gap that we're addressing in our communities. It also impacts us in terms of the communities of color where the schools are located are often very under-resourced, meaning they probably don't have Wi-Fi. They really don't have any electronic equipment. If they have Macs, they still have Bubble Macs, and then they have Macs that came out in 1985, literally in the class for kids to learn on. So the disparities there are like really, really bad. Even though we're right in the middle of Silicon Valley, you would think we would be totally wired, totally up to date, and we're not. Yeah. Yes.
Hi, first of all, I'm parents here in Nashville. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Two questions. How are your classes or workshops structured? Are girls attending on a weekly or monthly basis, or is it strictly in the summer?
It varies. So our program is really based on 3 core pillars. We do our flagship program, which is a Saturday workshop, and girls come in on a Saturday. And then we do traditional summer camps as well as longer intensives. Those intensives can either be 6 weeks, where girls come in from 6 to 8 weeks on a weekend, but some of those are also compressed into the summer. But they happen year-round in all of the chapters. Some chapters are just more active than others. So in our Memphis chapter, they host a workshop once a quarter. Same thing in some of our other smaller chapters, whereas in the Bay Area and New York is more frequent. So it's like maybe a once-a-month activity, but all after school at this point.
Okay, great. And my second question, do you have any plans, or are you working with any schools, middle schools and high schools, to give girls more interest interested and to learn more about the industry itself?
Yes, so we're starting that now and really starting to work closer with San Francisco Unified. It really has a strong push in the city of San Francisco in terms of getting more technology all through the pipeline, starting in K through 12, going to the community college level, as well as to students that are out and employed and working in tech companies. So that's the first school that we're really trying to build a strong partnership with and test the model and see how we can get it further into other school districts as well. You're welcome. Yes.
Do all monsters have to be well-versed in
No. So most of the, see, I don't consider myself well-versed in coding because I took Fortran and Pascal. So right about this time, my daughter knows way more than I do on everything technology related. But, you know, because I have a strong background from attending Vanderbilt in engineering, it's easy for me to be a mentor to the students. So we bring in both teachers as well as techies that work in corporations like Google and Twitter and actually train them how to deliver the classes. And then other volunteers can come in that have maybe just a basic understanding and are really there to more support the students because, as I was mentioning before, it's really project-based driven work. And we're really teaching them how to learn as opposed to telling them everything to do. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so you talked a lot about legacy, and I was just wondering whether this had been an idea you've been thinking of since you've been in college, or was it something that gained momentum after you had your daughter and maybe you started teaching her coding or something like that?
I had no, so I say a little bit in the presentation, but I really have to emphasize it enough. I had no plans to start a nonprofit. I did not want to do that at all, because I had always volunteered and been socially active, even on campus, like from Vanderbilt, probably from high school. I'd always been socially active, but I was really extremely career focused. So that was my goal, and I still a goal. I would love to start a startup company, a for-profit startup company. But I was just compelled to do it, and I think I was compelled to do this because as I was sitting in classrooms like this and listening to other panels and speakers, I kept hearing the same thing over and over. Oh, well, we just can't find women, or we want these students, but we can't find them. And I was like, really? I graduated in 1989. Don't tell them about what I graduated. But I graduated in 1989. The same problem should not be happening. And then when I would meet young women like yourself that were in college, and they would tell me their stories of being, you know, very isolated in their classes, and then I looked at my daughter as well and seeing that same path starting to repeat itself, I was just compelled to completely change my path and focus on this. And so that's where I am. Yeah. Yes.
I know you focus on young girls 7 to 17. Do you have a plan to follow their outcomes after the program, or when they start their careers?
We
Do you
do.
have a plan to start a national chapter?
Oh, the national chapter. We do hope to follow our students. We're starting this year to really do some more longitudinal studies of our students, not just in the program, but because we're getting anecdotal feedback from parents that the students are starting to do better in math. They're like starting to show an interest. Oh, I really need to get good in my science class because it's going to help me in BGC. So that's what we want to do. We think we're having an impact outside of the classroom. So we want to test that and study it. So we have a research grant that we're focused on doing that with our students. And we're also creating pathways that students are now becoming the teachers. So not just Ida that I mentioned there, but also Rebecca, who was one of the students on the Young Developer slide, has been mentoring at hackathons herself, mentoring other people that are learning to code. So we're hoping that these students stay a part of BGC and come back and be the leaders. So I always joke with my daughter that I'm passing this legacy on to you. So in 10 years, she was going to be, and she said, oh no, I'll have to run my own company, so I can't do BGC. So I was like, I can't argue with that. But I still have hopes that, you know, we have this continual cycle that girls come through. And we are hoping, right now our closest chapter here is Memphis. We hope to do something in Nashville. We will be hosting 2 workshops at the National Society of Black Engineers Conference at the end of March, on the 28th and 29th, and so that'll be our first time doing these really large sessions with youth in the Nashville community. Yes.
Well, first of all, hello, Thor.
Hi.
We are here because the local chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha has an emerging young leaders program. So we've got 2 of our girls here, and part of that program is dealing with STEM. So we would love to actually talk a little bit more about how you house your programs or your chapters, and who kind of sponsors that. Are they independent organizations or groups and things of that nature? Because again, we're running a monthly youth program with middle school girls, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
Yes.
On a monthly basis.
So we do the gamut. So we do programs like the one that we're doing next month for NSBE at their convention as part of their PCI focus. And we also we have had conversations with both Alpha Kappa Alpha as well as Delta Sigma Theta, because both organizations and some of the other Greek letter organizations have similar programs as well. And we do that also. So we go and we do workshops for other organizations as we have the time. So the only reason we don't do it more is because we're still like a tiny team of like 4 people, and we have like 3,000 girls coming through the program and more cities adding on all the time. But we can definitely talk more because that's something we're trying to do more of. Yes.
Do you get any government funding or government grants?
We are hopefully, knock on wood, getting our very first government grant this year. That's how we're going to do the longitudinal study that I mentioned. So this will be first, because we're still although we have made quite a bit of impact, it's still only been 2 years for us. So we're now just to the point where we're starting to see a lot of support come our way without us really having to do a lot of the work on our own. Because when we started the program, I literally paid it out of my pocket. I was coming out of biotech, luckily, and I was well paid in biotech. So I really paid it and seeded the organization out of my pocket to get Black Girls Co. started. And so it was like, it took us a while the first year for folks to really understand what we were doing and understand why we were doing it. So it's just been in this last year that we started to see the turnaround, and we're starting to get some of the support we need to really do the type of work we want to do. Yes?
I'm not a computer science major, but being like mechanical engineering and some other disciplines, I've been noticing a lot of the transition is happening between from physical experiments as far as research goes to like modeling and simulation. I don't know, are you guys considering moving towards doing some of that as well?
We are. So one of the focuses for us this year, we've been very heavy into design and app development, just development in general for the last 2 years. But we're looking this year to build more robotics, build more hardware, build more electronics in our curriculum, and just really get more into having the girls become makers and seeing the connection between both the hardware and the software and the design process thinking. So that's the way we are moving with our curriculum and really trying to build out a foundation that taps into all those different skill sets, because we don't really know. So some of our girls are more art-centric. Some of our girls, like my daughter has been on a robotics team, and I would try to get her to do the coding on the robotics team all the time, but she wants to build. I was like, you can program, why don't you program? She's like, no, I want to build. So we're really trying to make sure that we have different opportunities and options to tap into whatever the girls' interest might be. Yeah. Yes.
What advice do you have for someone who's trying to start a nonprofit or a startup? Because I think there's a lot of interplay between the two.
Yes, I would say, make sure you identify, well, you already know this because you're in engineering. Identify your problem statement and what you're trying to solve, and then do some research and gather what you need and what is not missing in the market. Don't replicate, because that doesn't really help anything. And then you need to just start. I'm a heavy proponent of the lean startup method. And I felt that has been one of the benefits of us being able to grow so fast in a short period of time, because we use Lean Startup from the very beginning of the organization and really built the organization in iterations. And we would test. We did test and design. Oh, we think we can do this type of class with the girls. We tested it. Then we tweaked it. Then we test something else. So having that continuous design process built into our business model really helped us to grow and have a lot of impact with very little money. Trust me, it was very little money. So you can do it. You just need to make the first step to start. Yes.
So I'm curious to know more about the attitudes of the girls who end up signing up. Like you said, is it Ida?
Yes.
She was just like, oh, I just came because my parents made me do it.
Mm-hmm.
But what is the attitude shift you see, and like, what are the things you do to get these girls motivated? I mean,
We don't do anything to get them motivated, but try to make sure that we have a fun, motivating, and supportive environment. And then the rest just falls in place because they're already technically centric. They already have phones. They're already... when we do game workshops, I really don't want them to play games in the class, but they do in the breaks. I was like, don't play that in class. But they're already really tech-centered and focused, so it's really just showing them how to take the step to the other side and become creative with it instead of just being a user of it. So when we did our very first pilot class, none of those girls, except for my daughter, had any experience in program. They did not understand. So when the first class we asked, do you know what computer programming means? They all said no. They had no idea. And we were also thought we would just focus on middle school girls, and we were not 7 and 17 at that time. We had siblings as young as 6 just because the parents dropped them off there and we said, okay, just leave them. And those girls outpaced the 12-year-olds day after day after day. They took off and they even worked better together than the 12-year-olds. And so that's why we became 7 to 17, because we were like, we can really teach 6 and 7-year-olds how to program because they're like right at the right base. So some of my teachers prefer to teach the 6, 7, 8, because by the time the girls get to high school, we have a whole different ball of wax to deal with. So we don't really do anything but, create activities that really focus on their needs, create the supportive environment, and make sure we have mentors, lots of women mentors that they can relate to in the classroom.
do you quick thing. Do you think there's one of those age ranges is like optimal for like getting, like it seems like you're leaning more towards the younger age?
Well, not really. So if you look at all of our different chapters, and we've kind of done the numbers and run the numbers, our biggest bulk of students falls in middle school, so 10 to 12, any city, from Bay Area, New York, Detroit, Chicago. 10 to 12 is the biggest, I would say that would be the biggest student group in all of our chapters. Although I do believe for the girls that we focus on, girls of color, we have to start as early as possible. Because by the time they get to high school, I really cannot even almost pay them to come and learn how to code. They're just not, their interests are set by that time. So if we can start funneling in the pipeline, and I think this is probably the same with all girls, early as possible, the better. We just don't go any earlier than 6 or 7, but you probably could. Yeah. Yes.
I've been teaching computer science here for 26 years, and this is not my question, but I am okay. To know, did you take CS201?
What's CS201?
Oh, okay.
What is it? What is it?
That's data.
No. What is CS201 though?
That's data structure.
No. But you all should take that. Data's hot right now. See? They just say.
I would characterize, just broadly, 3 different motivations I've seen students over the years wanting to take computer science. And parents. One is a guaranteed job. See that a lot. The second, just a love of computer science. I got into computer science because I thought its principles were metaphors for life. I mean, I'm a true geek.
Okay.
That's my motivation. And the third is the one you got up there, that you can change the world with it. And that in the last 2 or 3 years, I'm not sure to what extent that's become the dominant motivation on our campus or any campus, but it is sort of publicly the primary motivation that people are pushing computer science nowadays. When you look at your students, the students who are coming in, and I guess their parents too, because I think the motivations can be very different. Of those 3 motivations, job, geek, or change the world, what do you see most of?
I would say for parents, job, hands down. But I would say for our students, our girls, they really love technology. And when we show them how to use it, then as a secondary, they choose to do something that's socially relevant. So when we do these hackathons, like my daughter and her team, they built this app for food bank. Or we did a summer camp and they built some recycling application on the mobile. They do things like homework helpers too, or they also do things like, help me clean my room. So they tend to focus heavily on socially relevant I guess, opportunities. So I don't really want to say, I hate to always say like, okay, women are socially focused, because that's like stereotype. And I believe that's a stereotype. But they do tend to be more aware of their surroundings and how to use technology as a tool to solve it. But there are girls that love technology just as much, like my daughter, for just the pure fun of playing World of Warcraft all day long, like for weeks on end, or, you know. So it varies. So they take that love and then they transfer it to a way to create something socially impactful.
Great talk.
Thank you. Yes.
Do these apps that come through the workshops get published on the different app stores, and do you have projects online on your website?
We have a few of the websites online. We don't have many of the projects online yet, but some of the girls are starting to publish them. So the Hunger app, or the food bank app, we actually, after they did that Lean Startup Conference, they actually have folks from all over, Mexico, everywhere, asking them to finish it and publish it so that they could use it and deploy it in their communities. One of the students that was in the middle of those young developers, she's actually only 10. And I met their family because they just came as the whole family codes, and they came as a family with older brothers, etc., to one of our workshops, and they've continued to come. And she actually created a different app outside of BGC and just published it on Google Play and the Apple Store like in December. It's called Doll Finder. So they are doing a lot of this on their own outside of the class. Yes.
I know you've only been doing this for 3 years, but 2 years.
This is the third year.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, because you said most of them are 10 as well. Have you seen any of them kind of dwindle away as they get into high school? Has that happened?
Well, we're just now starting to see our first batch of high school students. And so we have, I would say, more than 75% of our students, and definitely in the Bay Area, are repeat. Like the girls that, you know, so when I was talking to a reporter this morning, she was like, well, you know the girls? I was like, well, I only know the girls in the Bay Area because they come to like every single class, and they email me about doing other activities. And so more than 75% of our students are repeat. And then we have a little bit of fall off. So we don't do a lot of advertising in the cities that we have chapters now because they bring their friends. So it's more probably like word of mouth now that we're growing, as opposed to actually having to do outreach.
So do you think that, I guess the whole stigma of coding, is they're kind of overcoming that as they go through the program? Because I know, like as a high school girl, you might shy away from coding just because you'll be the only one.
Yes. I absolutely do, but I think one of the reasons that they are getting past this whole stigma of being a geek is because they're in a class. We don't emphasize the geek part, we just create a class that they like. And so we kind of downplay that. Well, and that's like that study, ambient environment, about not having artifacts on the walls that, you know, I would probably like a picture of Star Wars or something, because I'm like you, I'm like a true geek. But it's been shown that girls don't like things like that. So our environments and our workshops don't have stuff like that, other than, you know, the computers or the phones or whatever we're doing. There's nothing that really like kind of elevates this whole geek image that may be out there in the public persona. And just the opportunity to work with other girls that like the same things they do is what I think keeps them motivated. And after they've done it for a while, that actually transfers when they're out of the classroom. So now, we were at a dinner and my daughter was like, well, what I like is that now that I've been going to Black Girls Code, I can talk in groups of boys about technology and not feel dumb, because she probably knows like more than most of the boys. And so that's always what we're saying that we're trying to do. We're trying to create that self-confidence in a secure environment so that when they go out into the world, they feel confident and they feel that they are able and capable of being just as competitive as the peers next to them. Yeah. Yes?
Do you ever present like coding to the girls as like an art form or like art in way?
Yes, so this is a touchy question. So STEAM, which is STEM with the A in art, because again, I'm really like heavily geeky, I really tried to shy away from it a lot in the beginning of our program because I didn't want the art in there. I just wanted to be focused on engineering, math, and science, and that's it. But one of the things that we found is that the girls tend to like art. They like the design element in the classes. So when they're doing a web page or even when they're doing game design, they will spend all their time designing their sprites and designing their icons, designing their characters if we let them. So we had to put art back into the program. So we put it back into the web part with a huge focus on design. We put it back in the game design where we really focus on bringing in artists that can help them through the graphics part. We're now trying to bed a STEAM curriculum into our overarching engineering and technology curriculum as well, because we feel that's a good spot to kind of get other girls that may not be completely focused on just the coding part of technology. But yeah, I didn't want to do it in the beginning. Yes.
A lot of tech companies have been criticized for doing exactly what you just mentioned, having Star Wars posters on the wall, and
Yeah.
creating this culture that's almost exclusionary to women. And what would you say to those CEOs or people that hire at those tech companies to make their companies a more inclusive place to work?
It has to be, so, okay, I always have to like temper how I say this. So I'm not a huge fan of like the whole pinkifying of tech to make it girl friendly, because every girl's not like that. That's again, stereotypes. But it has to be kind of neutral and gender neutral. So if I take a group of students to Google and they don't have those things on the wall, but they have a pinball table over there and they have a big room where you can go play video games, they have free snacks everywhere, the kids love it. Because, and to me, when I look at that, I was like, okay, this is so geeky. But it doesn't something that screams geek. It doesn't really like, kind of like forward that image. It's like a neutral image of being a lover of technology in that kind of environment. And I think as more and more companies start to go that way and get more women in the workplace, we'll see that it changes, it becomes a more friendly environment and welcoming environment for women. Yes.
So what are some other components you find that you have to add to your program? So like you were saying that you noticed that girls were getting better like math and science. Is there sort of like a tutoring aspect to your program or anything like that that you're finding you have to add?
We haven't added a tutoring aspect or anything like that just because we can't do everything. So this goes back to the question someone asked about wanting to do a startup. I think it's important to really figure out what you do and do it well. Because you could be the master of one thing, or you could do none well. So we really try to focus on doing what we do well, which is teach technology. The one thing we have decided to add this year, and we're doing more and more, is parents' engagement and teaching the parents of tech alongside the students. This is something we just kind of, again, it was a test. We just stumbled across it because parents would come to the workshop and they would not leave. They would just like mill around and just kind of look in, and we're like, hey, we got to do something about this. And so we was like, okay, let's do these panels and tell the parents what we're teaching the students so they can take it home and help the kids after class. That went great. They just like were hungry for all the information that we were giving them. Then we were like, okay, well, if we're going to teach this gaming class, let's teach the parents just a little bit of this gaming. So this was a long 6-week class, so that when the kids go home, they may want to ask a question and they'll know what they're talking about. So we started to do that. And now we're looking to do this partnership, hopefully a pilot with MIT, where they actually teach the parent and the child coding at the same time in the same class. And it's an experiment, a project they have out of the early learning laboratory at MIT. So we're hoping to be able to host one of those workshops and start doing that engagement with the parents, because we know that what we found is the parents are like some of the strongest advocates for the students and really helping to drive what we're trying to teach outside of our classroom. So if we can get them on board, then we know that the student was more than likely to stay in the program. Yeah. Anybody else? No one? Well, thank you. Thank you.
Hi everyone, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Annie Dower, I'm the E-Council President, and just on behalf of the Engineering Council, NESB, SWE, and Vanderbilt Student Government, as well as Dean Fauché and the rest of the School of Engineering, we just want to thank her for coming. Thank Ms. Bryant.
Thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So for you guys who want food, if you want to come this way, there will be Maggiano's outside. And yeah, go for that.